Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this very, very special edition of The Right Stand. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm on the road in the quest to try and get you something really interesting. But this is a conversation that compelled us to stop whatever we are doing and sit down and have a conversation with perhaps some of the most important and illuminary minds that are in current day. And this is to try and debunk the entire Aryan invasion theory, especially with the findings of the Rakhigarhi site. And I think that is something which is very, very significant. Joining us now is Vachan Chinderi, the former Vice Chancellor of the Deccan Deemed University, and a very, very renowned archaeologist who was in charge of the entire Rakhigarhi site between 2010 and 2017, if my memory serves me right. Abhijit Zog, who's written a lot, an author himself, an ad man, but who's dived deep into history, and whose book's foreword, I think, has been written by Vasan Chindeji. And Dr. Anand Ranganathan, who's been talking about the civilizational ethos of Bharat from a scientist's perspective and about the rising consciousness. But here today, what we will talk about is the third phase and the sudden findings that have now unearthed, which say that the Harappan civilization dates back to nearly 7,000 years ago. And it was such an advanced civilization that most of the knowledge systems or understanding that we have of the current day, they had at that time. How important is this? And does this now debunk the entire Aryan invasion theory? That a lot of our knowledge, our learnings were something which was brought by invaders who settled here and educated the local illiterate masses. That is the leftist narrative or the Distorian narrative, as some experts would call it. Your thoughts, Vasanji?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me here, and it's such a pleasure to be, with Anandji and Abhijitji on this panel. First, let me tell you that the recent news is not a new. It's not a new news as such. We have been excavating in this area for last 10 years or more than 10 years, and earlier also we got the dates. And it is not only 7,000, it's going back to 8,000 years ago. So we have the misunderstanding among the people is that the entire, from 8,000 to maybe, 3,500 years, the entire phase was the, developed phase of the Harappan culture. That is not true, in fact. So one of the objectives of my research at Rakhigarhi was to understand the, transformation, from the very modest beginning till the urbanization. And the modest beginning of the Harappan culture is going back to 6,000 BCE, which is almost 8,000 years ago. So from 6,000 BCE to almost 2,600 BCE, this is the early phase of the Harappan culture. And then we can see the excavation that I carried out clearly demonstrated a gradual transformation from the modest beginning till urbanization in this particular phase. And then comes the most advanced or most prosperous phase of the Harappan culture. That is called the Harappan Civilization. And that is from 2600 BCE to 1900 BCE. So this is a very, very important phase. And then of course, because of certain reasons, there's a decline of the Harappan culture at maybe around 1900 BCE. And the main cause for that, of course, was the climatic conditions. The climate became dry. And we have generated a lot of scientific data in this particular respect on the climatic conditions. And it was a global phenomenon. So most of the major civilizations collapsed at the same time. But this particular culture, after the decline also, has continued till 1500 in some places, 1300 in some places BCE. So this is the total length of the Harappan culture. So when the Archaeological Survey of India carried out the excavation at the site of Virana, in 2002-2003, that time they got very early dates for the beginning of the Harappan culture. And then of course, initially there were a lot of criticism, particularly from the scholars from the West and the Americans, because they were not really able to digest these early dates for the Harappan culture. So they started, making, a lot of hue and cry, saying that, maybe you have got, a solitary date from one site, maybe there is some contamination happening there. See, this type of question was never asked, when they got early dates, at the site of Mehergarh, because that site was excavated by the French scholar. That time, everybody accepted the dates. But we did not take that as some kind of negative for us. So we took that challenge, and then we excavated nearly half a dozen sites in that region, and all the sites, Farmana, site which I excavated before Rakhigarhi, then the site of Vitakal, and Ojiana, etc. These are the sites which are produced very early dates. And finally, we could prove that the beginning of the Harappan culture is going back to almost 6000 BCE, and that was confirmed finally at the site of Rakhigarhi. So we know that this is the beginning is quite early, and we never say that people, the origin of the culture happened here, and people have moved to Indus Valley, because there might be some early sites in that region also which have not been excavated, or they have not been able to tap the sites. But this is the scenario which is really happening in this region. So that was one objective of my research in this particular region. Secondly, as far as the site of Rakhigarhi is concerned, number of scholars had worked earlier, but nobody had given a proper estimate about the total area of the site of Rakhigarhi. There were different estimates, but nobody tried to understand what is the area that was occupied. And then when I started in 2010, so 2010 to 2012, I spent time in calculating the site by using the latest geophysical instruments. And at the end of the study, I was so surprised, because the total area that we calculated was 550 hectares, which is almost double the size of Mohenjo-daro, which was supposed to be the largest Harappan city. So now we know that this is the largest Harappan city, and we also have got quite good understanding about the transformation in the material culture, in the structure from the beginning till the most prosperous phase. And the last question that we asked, which was asked by many scholars before also, that who are the Harappan people, whether they are indigenous people or they came from outside. A lot of Europeans particularly, they thought that the Mesopotamians came here and they established the Harappan culture, which was very absurd. But we had no scientific data to challenge this hypothesis. So what we decided that if you want to understand about the people, the best way is to get the DNA, and that is the clinching evidence which will prove or disprove in fact our hypothesis. So scientifically now we have proved that there is no Aryan invasion at all. The division this Aryan and Dravidian was artificially created by the maybe colonial rulers. In fact, there is no substance in that. And thirdly, that the distinct South Asian genes started happening, started muting around 12,000 years ago. The same genes came, in fact, in the Harappan people, and the same genes, we are inheriting, in fact. And we tested the modern population. We chose different regions, in fact, from Andaman, Nicobar to Kashmir, and from Afghanistan to whole of India. And surprisingly, we found that most of us, no matter what religion we follow, what language we follow, most of us are the descendants of the Harappans. We are inheriting something like 25 to 30% Harappan genes, and the rest are all mixed, in fact. So right from the early stage, there was a lot of movement happening among the people. And because of that, mixing was also happening. So we have maybe 2% Iranian genes, maybe 4% maybe African genes, 3% maybe European genes. So like that. So what is important here that that there is no breakage in the genetic history of South Asia at all. Suppose the Aryans had come from outside, then two things would have happened. One is that there could have been a discontinuity or breakage in the genetic history of South Asia, which has never happened. And secondly, now when people come from outside, they would have brought the new cultural elements in South Asia, which has not happened. In fact, there's a continuity in the material culture for last 10,000 years. And I always say that the Harappans are the founders of the Indian culture, because most of the knowledge system, most of the tradition that they introduce, that is being inherited by people even today. And there is a large section of the population in South Asia who are dependent on the traditional knowledge system which was developed by the Harappans. So this is a very, very important research that we have made. And now,
जी,
we are focusing on the knowledge system that the Harappans developed. We are studying that, we are reconstructing that, and the knowledge that we are generating, that can be, supplied to the people who are following the, traditional knowledge system,
जी,
for maybe for producing their, maybe
hmm,
crafts and, other things, better, so that they have
right,
got value. So this is the
right.
kind
So
of research that we are doing.
no, this is phenomenal, Vasanji, what you're saying, because Dr. Ranganathan, as a scientist, let me bring you in. And does this then settle the entire civilization debate? And the other question that then begets is, why is it that the counter has to always be scientifically proven, whereas the claims made by the historians are always arbitrary and figment of people's imagination, which they believe to be true, and then that tends to become gospel.
Say arbitrary says that when they formulated this hypothesis that the Aryans came from outside. Absolutely, there was no scientific evidence for that. They have not cited any convincing evidence for this particular hypothesis. And this was a ploy of the Britishers because they always wanted to divide our society so that they can rule properly here. That was the objective of these people, and therefore they narrate this started this particular narrative that you people are not capable of maybe doing any kind of good work or
Vasanji,
development.
Vasanji,
Yes.
just taking this to Dr. Ranganathan and Abhijit Joe just for their comments. But Dr.
Sure.
Ranganathan, if the Britishers started this, why is it that it was continued post our independence and the leftist historians succumbed to this narrative? And why did they tend to push that over and above scientific evidence? Anandji.
Good evening, Anand, and good evening to my fellow panelists. Can I just say at the beginning what an honor it is to be sharing the panel with Professor Shinde. He may or may not get the Bharat Ratna, but he is a Kohinoor for us. I want you and everyone else in India to know that. So thank you so much,
Thank you. It's a
Professor
really
Shinde, for.
compliment for you.
I want to answer your question in three ways. The first is, of course, directly when you say that why is it that even though Max Muller and others would have spread this canard that Aryans came and taught us everything, they brought everything, including the culture, and they taught us everything. Why is it that even post independence, this canard not only grew, but it was fructified by our historians, leftist historians, and our textbooks? The answer to that is that the left has traditionally believed that India as a nation did not exist before. There was no unity amongst Indians, that we were not one group, that all our culture was brought from outside, that we did not invent or discover anything of any use either to us to the world. So it made sense that us, as a film says, poor people, destitute people, don't know anything, are just down and out in everything. And out comes this, finger from the above, proverbially or metaphorically, and teaches us everything. So that suited very well, and that has continued because since independence, we've been taught this whole exercise in self-loathing and, kind of celebrating what was never ours. So it fits very well into this leftist dogma that Indians are absolutely useless and they didn't create anything. You see, the Aryan invasion theory, one must understand, or AIT, that was very speciously nuanced and changed to Aryan migration theory. I don't know what they do now, Aryan interaction theory, and then Aryans came and had tea and biscuits with us. But it doesn't just mean that the Aryans, so-called the steppe people, migrated or mixed. It is their contention that they brought along horses, chariots, sophisticated arms, Vedas, Vedic life, and thought. If therefore one could show that all these existed before the steppe people mixed with the indigenous, that the Rakhigarhi people, who now it turns out didn't have any steppe genetic trace, as shown by Professor Shinde 4 years ago, were Vedic people. And their life, way of life, habitat, riverbank, basin, culture, burial sites, rituals find reference in the Rig Veda, one would not be wrong in concluding that the AIT stands discredited. And that is exactly what has happened. Now, 5 years ago, Professor Shinde and others showed that the Harappan people, Rakhigarhi people, did not have any steppe component. Now, that wasn't conclusively to prove that the Aryan invasion did not happen 3,500 years ago. But now their discovery that the way of life, the horses, the arms, the Vedic life, everything had a continuity even for 8,000 continuous years, definitely discredits the Aryan invasion theory. And now, for once and for all, it stands completely discredited, because not only was there not a steppe component in the Harappan people, it is that their civilization existed much before the purported Aryans came tumbling down the steppe mountains into horses and taught us everything. And the discovery of the chariot, the discovery of the indigenous horse, the discovery of a rice grains, the monumental discovery in 2019 that the Saraswati River was not actually monsoon fed but glacial fed 9,000 to 4,500 years ago. That is what finds mentioned in the Rig Veda. So all these components together, with the landmark discovery recently of Professor Shinde and colleagues, completely puts paid, actually buries the Aryan invasion theory once and for all.
Then Abhijit joke, before I go back to Professor Shinde, then all those historians who garnered so much of credibility by pushing this AIT should now LIT their theories and their thesis.
Actually,
and those textbooks should be junked outright.
Anand, it's great to be back on your show, and I share Anand Ranganathan's feelings that it's really an honor to be on the same show as Dr. Shinde and also Anand Ranganathan. So I consider myself privileged. I will not venture into the scientific part of it, because both Dr. Shinde and Anand Ranganathan are the experts in that. But I would like to just share with the viewers that how actually this Aryan invasion theory originated, from where did it come. So you will be surprised that before the British came to India, there was nothing like Aryan invasion or Aryan migration or anything like that. Aryans were always considered to be original inhabitants of India, and that is how our scriptures also spoke about. But when the British East India Company came to India and started trading, many Britishers came to India, people like Warren Hastings, William Jones, who were very much interested in culture, language, and various aspects of Indian civilization. And they were completely taken aback by what they saw, because the richness and the glory of ancient Indian civilization really impressed them, and they realized that there is a great similarity between Sanskrit and various European languages. And Max Muller, who was the proponent of Aryan invasion theory, he himself has gone on record saying that we knew that there is some similarity among the European languages, but we didn't understand what kind of similarity it was. And we realized that only when we came to India and we learned Sanskrit, because through Sanskrit, all these languages are connected to each other. So they had a great, there was a wave of love and respect for Indian civilization, not only in UK, but in the entire European continent. And all this was okay as long as their target was only trading. But when they won the War of Plassey in 1757, they realized that they are now here for a long time, and India is going to be the part of British Empire. And then all this love and respect that was created for Indian civilization became very inconvenient for them, that the people who are going to be their slaves, their language and their civilization has created the European languages and the European civilization. Like Voltaire, the great French philosopher, has gone on record saying that the European civilization was born on the banks of the Ganges. So they had kind of accepted that European languages and European civilization came from India. And this acceptance now became very inconvenient for them, because they couldn't possibly accept that their slaves have given them their languages and their civilizations. So to wriggle out of this situation, they created this completely fake theory called as Aryan invasion theory. They said that white people from the southern part of Russia, they came to India on horses and chariots, and then they defeated. I mean, they didn't even know that Indus Valley civilization existed at that time, because this particular theory was put forth somewhere around 1830, when the Indus Valley civilization was not even discovered. It was discovered in 1921-22. So even before they knew anything about Indus Valley civilization, they came up with this imaginary theory. And Max Muller, who claimed that Aryans came in 1500 BCE, later on himself admitted that the date given by him was completely imaginary. He had no evidence for supporting this particular date. What this genetic evidence has done is that it has debunked one more theory, that the IVC people or Sindhu Saraswati civilization people were Sumerians. That is the theory which the Westerners tried to put forth. That has completely been debunked.
Professor Shinde, then does that mean that we can categorically say that the civilizational ethos that we talk about, the civilization that we talk about, is not borrowed, is of our own, and the fact that the Rakhi Garhi, site is in Haryana of today means that this is in the heart of Bharat itself. Even that is not borrowed or in some other foreign land of today. We are the oldest civilization, and it is our civilization ethos that continues, the same knowledge systems that continue till today, because you said 40% of our DNA is still Harappan.
Yes. Yeah, I think it is very important, Anand, to understand that we do not have only the genetic evidence. That is very important, of course. But we also have, as Abhijit has mentioned, that we have also very strong archaeological evidence to show the continuity for 10,000 years. And also our literature is so strong. It shows, it also mentions the continuity till today. So there is a continuity, and this research, based on archaeological and genetic, evidence, clearly establishes the fact that the beginning of agriculture happened in this region by the indigenous people. These same people were responsible for developing the Harappan culture, and from Harappan culture to Harappan civilization. So it is 100% indigenous, civilization, no doubt about that. Secondly, Anand also has mentioned about the other evidences like horse and etc. But let me tell you that we also have a horse, in the form of actual bones, horse bones from the site of Surkodara. And also we have some terracotta figurines from Lothal and Mohenjo-daro. Typical Harappan, this horse figurines are found. So we have that in fact. Then there is a strong evidence about the fire worship at the site of Kalibanga, even Rakhigarhi. So there is a lot of continuity in this particular aspect also. Secondly, if at all somebody believes that they were Aryans, then my hypothesis, my conclusion is that it is we who are the Aryans. Because we started now, see, AIT has been rejected now, and we are proposing OIT now. We started going out based on the scientific evidence again, because we analyzed the data from the contemporary sites in Iran, Shari Shokta, and also one site in Gonur in Turkmenistan. Both the sites were contemporary to the Harappans. And the Harappans have very strong links with this region, because the excavations carried out there clearly indicated or clearly revealed the Harappan data in that region. And then what we did in fact, we also compared the the genetic history of the Harappans with the Shari Sokta and the Gonur population. And surprisingly, what we found that we found the Harappan elements present in them, but not their elements present in the Harappan population. That means the Harappan people started going out there first. They got mixed up, and then people started to reciprocating. They started coming after that. So we started venturing out first, in fact. So this is very, very important. And then why again I will raise this issue about the British. Why they have created this particular confusion in the history of South Asia, because they gave the impression of the whole world that we have come to India to because Indians are barbaric, illiterate, and we want to civilize them. This was the narrative they had spread all over the world. But when they discovered the Harappan civilization in 1920s, Abhijit mentioned about that. Then they were surprised, because we had such an advanced civilization. Even Europe did not have, knew apart England, but Europe did not have such an advanced civilization. Then they had a great question, how to explain now to the world that we have come to civilize these people, because these people were already civilized much more than us. And then they say that, okay, yes, you have the evidence, but the people who made this are not Indians. They came from outside. So that is how they started, fostering the idea about the Aryan invasion, etc., very strongly. And most of the elements, most of the cultural, traditions that which were introduced by the Harappas, they have continued today. So also the language also. So this is my hypothesis, and we are working on that. So I think through this research, we can certainly shed a lot of light on the origin and the development of this Harappan culture, which is our own culture. I call this as the Indian culture because it is the base of the Indian culture. And Haryana is the cradle of the Indian civilization. Most of the early developments happened there, and then it is spreading in different parts of the world.
सर बड़े प्यार से बताया लेकिन बहुत सही बताया कि it is not Aryan invasion but it is Harappan intelligence and that too Indian, very very Indian. Anand Ranganathan ji, last word. I have to wind up after that.
No, absolutely. Very quickly, because both Professor Shinde and Abhijit have explained everything beautifully. I just wanted to add something that through the landmark discovery, I think it's soon to be published, of my good friend Neeraj Rai and colleague of Professor Shinde. Now, this R1A1 haplogroup supposed to be an Aryan haplogroup that came to India. Now, he said that actually the origin of R1A1 is in India, because maximum diversity is in India. So, once that thing comes, that would be the last nail in the coffin. But I want to say something to the leftist quacks, who've destroyed science in this country for the last 100 years by peddling such theories. They don't understand that science doesn't care for the origin of a culture, of imbibing a culture. I mean, I would be proud I consider myself, Anand, as a proud Ethiopian. I'm a descendant of Lucy. For me, what matters is that we are a bunch of cells. We all originated from the single unicellular cell. We've come here. We are creations of chance, of, something that happened 4.5 billion years ago. So for people to say that, look, you must imbibe this culture, you've been, thrust this culture upon you, it's completely wrong. Science doesn't accept this at all. Any culture, had it been African or Native American or Australian or Aboriginal, I would be a proud recipient of such culture. This is what population genetics, the new field, has told these leftists. I hope they learn this lesson.
Very well said. Different perspectives, very scientific, not political, not claims, not quackery, but proper science and theory. Theorizing what science is and dispelling all these norms. We have to unlearn a lot of our history that's been fed to us, and we have to relearn a lot of our own knowledge systems that have been continuing with us and have been all around us. We've just not seen it. Professor Shinde, Dr. Ranganathan, and Abhijit Jogdi, thank you so much. Such a wonderful conversation. Thank you. Look forward to many more.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Namaste.